The words of the founders of Responsibility to Protect. Now, if you take out your map, and I'm extremely familiar with the Middle East, I have been reporting from there for 7 years, it's one big mess of a clan in Syria, a clan in Saudi Arabia, a clan in Jordan. What unites the whole Middle East, if you want to unite them under nudging closer to some sort of one world concept? Well, that happens to be the Muslim Brotherhood. They're in every country, and if they take over, we're not talking about Egypt being a sovereign nation, because Egypt's going to merge with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Stay there. Let's get into this.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run.
Aaron Klein is our guest for the rest of this segment. In a little short segment at the end of the hour, I'm going to read some excerpts of the new article where we're announcing and giving details about the new publication, InfoWars Magazine, free to everybody that purchases stuff at InfoWarsShop.com. You can also buy them in bulk. And in the next few days, we're going to launch a subscription if you just want to get one every month or more copies. But right now, you can buy them in bulk at cost. A key weapon in the info war. It's available right now. We can show people the article, too, if they're watching at prisonplanet.tv. Print 2.0, answer to the internet kill switch, going back to the roots of freedom of speech. Our answer to the internet kill switch, Alex Jones. And you can also link through there in the first paragraph. You can just sign up for the InfoWars Insider, our daily news articles, videos, special reports, links to the podcast that we send to people if they sign up for the free newsletter. Well, tomorrow I will send in the morning blast, email blast, we will send you a link to the high-quality PDF that you can just, turn like a regular page. It's just like reading a regular newspaper or magazine, but it's digital for your iPhone or iPad or Droid, or for your regular computer. If you sign up at InfoWars Insider, a lot of exclusive articles in there by Gerald Celente, you name it. A very, very powerful issue, first issue. And it's got the Federal Reserve on fire on the front. And we're saying, Rome burned, will we? Because Europe is burning in many areas in riots, and the Federal Reserve is burning down our currency and our sovereignty. So I asked the question, will major cities like D.C. and other places down the road burn in riots? I hope that's not the case. We're trying to avert some type of civil war in this country. And that's my next question for Aaron Klein, best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, Fool Me Twice, the new book that's out breaking down Obama's shocking plans for the next 4 years, exposed. You were getting into their plan to use the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide, which is probably one of the biggest, most cohesive groups in the world. Christianity is broken into a million pieces, and the seminaries have all been infiltrated by communists and globalists, so it's pretty much fractured Christendom. They're secular humanists, hate Christianity, but they love jihad for whatever reason. And so now we see the clash of civilizations, actually, that the neocons talked about. They said a war between the West and the East. But if you look at it, it's a manufactured conflict where you put the radicals in and then I guess see that as the unifying force worldwide and then play the clash of civilizations? Or are you saying that the Obamanoid types would actually really want to bring in some type of radical Muslim caliphate worldwide?
I don't know whether they even care about a Muslim caliphate worldwide as much as they care about uniting, let's say, the Middle East under one sort of common banner. And it happens to be that the only common banner really is the Muslim Brotherhood. It's amazing you mentioned Europe burning, and right now Obama, if he gets another 4 years, will implement some of what caused Europe's entire economy to crash and burn. He doesn't want us to know his plans, and so I'm trying to outline them in a very specific way in the book. But also, by the way, look at Syria right now, because it's a perfect example. Hillary Clinton last week, according to reports, talked with Turkey, which borders Syria. Turkey and Syria are enemies. Turkey wants to get rid of Bashar Assad's regime. Hillary talked with the Turkish leader about possibly implementing a no-fly zone in Syria, which would be under the banner of responsibility to protect. The very doctrine that I point out in Fool Me Twice, will be some of the motivating driving force behind the future of the U.S. military. But who is fighting on the other side? You have Bashar Assad, the president of Syria, who's been accused of so-called human rights atrocities, because responsibility to protect can be used against any country that's accused of genocide, of human rights abuses, of atrocities. But actually in the past, by the way, the United Nations has used some of those labels in places where they absolutely don't fit. But actually, the jihadists have been streaming into Syria. Even mujahideen that we were supporting, that we were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. Of course, we were supporting them before that with the Soviets.
Now they're being supported, and they're the main force. Even the CFR, as you know, 2 weeks ago, one of their writers came out and said, "We need al-Qaeda." That was a quote. So the TSA, again, needs to go in my pants to make sure bin Laden isn't hiding in there. But all of a sudden, al-Qaeda-affiliated groups actually flying the al-Qaeda flag, al-Qaeda patches, they're now supposedly these humanitarians. And, you know, you've hit on something that's key here. That really is the UN global government model, where they fund proxy rebels to attack a country, whether that country be good or bad or indifferent. And then, oh, we've got to invade to protect the peaceful rebels that are blowing up police stations and shooting people and burning down churches and mosques, and of Alawites, and also driving out Jews. I mean, what are they going to do now in Egypt as they're driving out Christians and the few Jews that are there, or as they line up blacks in Libya and kill them and, you know, drive out Christians? What are they going to do when the jihadis, as promised, go after the Shiites, the Alawites, the Christians, and the Jews? I mean, they're burning up and blowing up the churches right now in Syria, and our media is calling them heroes.
Yeah, our great Judeo-Christian country, founded with the Judeo-Christian values, is aiding the side that is causing Christians to flee from Egypt, that is persecuting Christians right now in Syria. Now, the White House claims that it's only providing non-lethal aid to the so-called rebels, and we know who the rebels are. At this point, even the New York Times is admitting that it's in part certainly represented by al-Qaeda. But I have a lot of information that the United States has been using cutouts, like Saudi Arabia in particular, to give Saudi weapons, which actually come ultimately from the U.S., to the rebels. And so I believe there's no question at this point, according to multiple sources that I talked to, that we are absolutely helping the rebels get, and I hate using that term, I don't even want to use it, they're not rebels, helping the insurgents that are fighting Bashar Assad's regime to get weapons. So this means we are funding the other side, which we do all the time, by the way. It's not just in Syria, even in the Palestinian Authority, where we give training, actual training, to the Palestinian so-called militias. Well, the problem is that these militias double as members of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is the terror group that attacks Israel. It's so ridiculous that I've personally interviewed in person, for example, the senior leader of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, declared a terror group by the United States. His name's Allah Sanakra. I met him and his gang in Nablus in the northern West Bank, and he was telling me about how he was trained as a militia member by the United States. Or, even more ridiculous, we give weapons to them. And I found out that, at least until 2 years ago, the guy who was on the receiving team, the chief of the receiving team in the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, that was getting the weapons, his name's Kamal Ranam, I also interviewed him. He's the chief of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade terror group also in Ramallah. So it's been going on for quite some time, and now the situation is getting out of hand and really ever more dangerous. I agree.
Let me bring up this angle with you. And again, we have a New York Times best-selling author on the line with us, Aaron Klein. He's written Fool Me Twice, available at InfoWarsShop.com or link through at InfoWars.com. Obama's shocking plans for the next 4 years exposed. It is so crazy to say, give up all our rights, Al-Qaeda's going to get you, but then separately, openly being funding and training all these groups and affiliated groups. What about the 10,000 missiles, 2,000 plus being heat-seeking or radar-guided, that disappeared out of Gaddafi's caches and are now being shipped all over the world by these jihadis? What's going to happen when they start blowing up airliners? Well, I guess that'll give the government the excuse to take more of my rights because they gave these people 10,000 missiles. and it's admitted this is going on. I mean, what do they think is going to happen when radical jihadis are in control of Syria and our evil prostitute media is praising it while they commit black genocide in Libya? I mean, this is wild what's happening. So your comment on the missiles, and then what do you think the end game is? What would Obama do in the next 4 years with his jihadi brigades?
You know, I personally talked with Israeli security officials who have exactly that kind of information, that the missiles that were in Libya and many other kinds of weapons and munitions are being sold now using Iranian and other money to the jihadis across the Middle East, including in the Sinai Peninsula, where reportedly they do have anti-aircraft missiles that can down an airliner in the Sinai. Now, what's even more crazy, I don't know really what is crazier here at this point, but is the billions of dollars in aid that we've given to Egypt. And we were told at the beginning of the so-called Arab Spring that the Muslim Brotherhood would never take control of the presidency and would certainly never take control of the United States-backed, the United States-armed, the United States-funded Egyptian military. Well, Mohammed Morsi, President Obama's good pal, the Muslim Brotherhood new Egyptian president, just fired the top brass of the Egyptian military. And so now the Muslim Brotherhood in control, basically, for all intents and purposes, of what I would say is the number 2 or number 3 most powerful military in the Middle East. And yet we have a massive situation of this weapons proliferation. What's going to happen in Syria? Should Assad go?
So what is the grand plan? Why would the State Department, why would NATO do this? Why would they do this? I mean, what are they planning? Just to try to get a Shiite-Sunni civil war going?
I think that that's certainly where I actually think that is where we're headed, because if you look at the situation right now in the Middle East today, it's Iran and its Shiite proxies, meaning Hezbollah, meaning some in Lebanon, although not all, meaning Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and others, although actually Hamas and Islamic Jihad are Sunni, but they're paid off by Iran. And then on the other hand, you have the Sunni superpowers of Saudi Arabia and now Egypt, and we are headed toward a massive possible Middle East confrontation. There's no other way to read the tea leaves here. And in Obama's second term, the use of the U.S. military, you would think, with all of these growing threats, although actually we're feeding these threats, certainly, I would say we're behind some of them, that the use of the U.S. military, you think, would be to combat these threats. But actually, it's to scale back the U.S. military with regard to funding to certain aspects, but then to use it for a more internationalist agenda. So
sure, and also take over Africa with the made-up Coney stuff and get a bunch of the diamonds and oil and the rest of it. But I mean, at the same time, that's why I don't think Obama at this time wants the Iran attack, because that would probably unify the Muslims instead of just getting them to kill each other. And I think all of it is extremely immoral, and I think it goes back to 53 and Mossadegh. If our government and the British government wouldn't have thrown him out and then double-crossed the jihadis and then put in the Shah, it just goes on and on. This policy of putting radical Muslims in didn't just start with Obama this last 3 years. It's been going on since the British did it with Saudi Arabia, and it is an evil policy, and I think it's just going to continue to sow the seeds of our destruction.
Yeah, and it continued after the Shah, obviously, with deposing the Shah and then putting in now the radical Shiite fundamentalist regime. This is how dangerous it is. I mean, the Shiites believe that the coming of their imam, the Mahdi, the Islamic Shiite Messiah, can only come about if there's an apocalyptic world battle of good versus evil, where the world almost comes to the brink of destruction, and then the Islamist Messiah comes back. So does NATO, does the Obama administration, does the European Union understand that they're playing with fire in the Middle East, and not just in the Middle East, of course, the ramifications around the world, even in the United States? Obviously, Iran terrorist proxies are very capable of